Hello there, everybody, and welcome to the webinar today. My name is Barnaby. I'm the industry specialist for education and the modern workplace here in academia. And I'm incredibly glad to have you all with us today. I'm seeing some familiar faces and also some new customers for academia. So it's absolutely brilliant to see you all. Throughout the webinar, we're going to talk about all of Microsoft's latest and greatest devices with the Surface family, as well as the Microsoft 365 solutions that then bring all of those together. Just a quick overview. Here's what we're going to cover in today's show, or today's call, sorry. So start off obviously with the welcome and introductions as we've just done so, and then we'll touch on a bit about the Surface devices and the learning environment as it is today. We're kind of back to the previous status quo, if you like, and then we'll look at some updates to the family of Surface devices. We'll then touch on a bit of remote work or remote teaching with Microsoft Teams. We'll then move into a bit of modern management and zero-touch deployment, and then we'll polish off with what a Surface as a service looks like with academia, and then we'll answer all of your questions that you may have. Just on that note, and a bit of housekeeping for you, we are 10 seconds ahead of where you guys are viewing this now. So if anything goes wrong, then we have the opportunity to can the call and start again. I should also mention that there is a chat function and also a question and answer function as well that we'll go back to at the end of the call. So, if you do want to interact with us, then please do. There's a team of people behind the call who are going to be there in the chat room and also there in the Q&A section. Just a last thing to point out on housekeeping, as you may have already noticed, I do have a slight stutter. It did go away. It's slightly creeping back in, but it will go again. But yes, it may feature in today's call. So I ask that you bear with me. Thank you. So let's first of all touch on what Surface looks like in the learning environment. And we truly believe, both here in academia and also the guys in Microsoft, that technology can really inspire creativity in today's learning environments, not just the classroom. We don't want to restrict the learning to those four walls, to the learning environments where those makers of tomorrow are actually learning and having their teaching and learning experience, whether that's in a formal classroom, whether it's outside on a field trip or in the school garden or something like that. We want to make sure that technology can help inspire those students to be more creative. And ultimately, how that technology can help improve the digital learning experience for students. And of course, the development in school is at its most crucial point and is really going to help to ready them for the technology that they will probably one day use in their working life. The digital imperative, just on that note of using technology in their working life in the future, the ways that the people interact and socialize and also work are shifting quite rapidly, as I'm sure you guys have seen over the last year. It's kind of been pushed along a fair bit. But by the time that the students of today, so I believe it's the year 5 students of today, by the time we're in the year 2030, they will all be graduates, which is a pretty scary thought, to be quite honest with you. And by the time they are graduates in 2030, the world is going to be a completely different place from anything that previous generations have experienced. Now, of course, we talk about this all the time. We're preparing students for roles that don't yet exist, but we're also teaching students now who we don't know what courses they'll be doing in university in 9 years' time. There we go. So while the key components of learners and educators and curriculum will mostly remain the same, we can expect that the classroom of the future to be slightly different from today's, or in fact, incredibly different from today's, as the learning environments of today are completely different from how they were 30 years ago. But actually, just on that point, when we look at the advancement of the learning environment today to what it was in maybe the 1980s, as an example, most schools still have a teacher stood at the front of the room, and although they're no longer interacting with a chalkboard, they're now interacting with an interactive flat panel. but the students are still, working out of a textbook or an exercise book or on some worksheets, much like they would have done in the past. So actually, it's not really come on too much. And I guess how can we use technology to enhance the learning environment of today, and ultimately change it? Advances in technology are also going to cause disruptions in the workforce. So as automation is going to replace up to 50% of existing jobs, and that's in the US alone. But at the same time, the fastest growing occupations are going to require a higher level of cognitive skills in areas such as problem solving and critical thinking and creativity. And 30 to 40% of jobs are going to require explicit social and emotional skills. There are a lot of stats there. I'll just touch on those again. So it's thought that automation is going to replace up to 50% of existing jobs in the US alone. So where there's the lower skilled, the lower paid jobs, they will all start to be automated, and there's going to be a higher demand for higher cognitive skills such as problem solving, critical thinking and creativity. And how can we prepare our students to start thinking that way with the technology that they're using, so that they are ready for those new jobs that come about? Also, the learning experience that they're going to have in 9 years' time, so in 2030 when they're graduates, they'll all probably be using some sort of a mixed reality device on maybe a day-to-day basis through something on their eye or something like that. It's going to be a completely different environment from where we are today, and we've got to be ready for that. So access to technology is a common concern of the classroom. So 40% of EdTech experts said that having every student or giving every student access to digital equality is a main hurdle, and 43% of students said that they don't have access to devices. Or sorry, teachers have said that 43% of students don't have access to devices. Now, of course, over the last year or so, that's kind of shifted. That's old data. That's 2018 on the first point there with the 40%, and 2019 on the 43% there. And of course, after the DfE's tranches over the last year that they've delivered into the education sector, as well as the investment that schools and colleges and also the universities have had in the last year or so, this data will be slightly out, but still there is an element of digital inequality in schools. So whilst students were able to borrow a device while they were learning from home over the last year, they've most probably had to hand those back in when everything went back to normal, if you like, in March this year. So again, whilst the digital equality gap closed a fair bit, it's now kind of widened again. Now everybody's had to hand in the devices. And it's quite interesting. A few of those devices that were handed out by schools and the Department for Education were actually the only device in some homes, which is an amazing thing to think about, where some of us are fortunate enough to have a mobile phone in our hands, maybe an iPad and a laptop. Others are out there and they're just using the one device between 4 people in a family for online banking, paying the council tax, but also 2 students doing their online work as well. So it's no doubt that the attainment gap has also increased as the digital equality gap has also increased in the last year or so. So what we aim to do as academia is work with our schools and colleges and our universities to embed technology in teaching and learning. It's fantastic that there's a lot of you on this call today who are interested in Surface and what that can do for your school and how it can help your teaching and learning. But we've got to go back to teaching and learning is why we're doing this. We often work with schools who see this thing called technology that they have to invest in. It's a tick box. It's something that they have to do. But actually, what we would rather do is work with those schools who want to invest in technology, but work with those schools and see how we can make that technology get them to where they need to be. That end goal of the school development priorities, of which I'm sure you guys have got them to roll off your tongue. They could be improving attainment of students and the results across your schools, to meet or exceed the national levels. It could be to create a better culture and student experience, to create an environment for local children, or even reduce the learning loss and close the attainment gaps within the year groups. So we don't want technology to become a diversion, if you like. We want technology to become an enabler. We want to embed it in teaching and learning. Sorry, we want to work with you to embed it into the teaching and learning workflow of a teacher to student and back. And that's ultimately how we're going to work with you moving forwards after this call with the teams at Microsoft. Just something else to touch on, and I know this is quite an old model, but is still incredibly pertinent. And if we think back to the last 12 months, well, in fact, it's a bit longer than that now, isn't it? The last, say, 14 months, and we think of what our teachers have been through. March 2020, a lot of schools substituted technology in for textbooks and exercise books. Sorry, yes, so students were now doing their work as they would have done previously. Just now they're doing it through a laptop, an iPad, a Surface, etc. And there wasn't really much of a change in how they were learning and in how they were working, other than instead of doing an essay in a workbook, they're now doing an essay in Word, as an example. And what we saw was there were some teachers that stayed in that enhancement piece, but moved up the ladder slightly to the augmentation phase. And, they started to think, right, okay, so how can we actually use this technology to maybe change what we're doing ever so slightly? And there were some teachers that really moved into the modification phase and were like, right, okay, let's really embrace this time and see how we can actually use technology to make an impact on how we teach and fundamentally change how we deliver teaching and learning, not just while we're in a lockdown, but after that as well. And I think this is a key slide as well. A lot of schools, a lot of teachers have been through a huge learning curve over the last year or so that they would normally take over a much longer period of time, 12, 18, 24 months of CPD, the C being crucial in that. But actually they almost had to do it overnight in March, and the teachers have made it work, which is absolutely phenomenal. As mentioned, we're going to touch on the Surface family, but just before we do, I just wanted to touch on why Surface is the right choice for schools. So there's a few points on here that we're just going to dive into. So the first point is transforming the classroom time. So how can teachers use the devices to make or plan exciting and interactive lessons in much less time? How can we reduce the amount of time that teachers spend planning, but also whilst reducing the time, they're making a much more exciting and interactive lesson, because they know that all of the students in the classroom are all going to be on the same Surface device. Whether that's making an incredibly rich PowerPoint presentation to show something in a biology lesson, or even in a history class, how can they maybe edit lots of clips together to help students make a short film or something, instead of doing an essay in English literature? And how can teachers start to use the content that they're delivering, but actually record the delivery beforehand and then share that across multiple channels to multiple classes at once? So whilst you are teaching this one group of students, you can actually then use that same class that you've just delivered to this bunch of students to another school that may be a part of a trust or part of a consortia, or it may just be another group within that same year group, again reducing the teacher time and teacher workload. Of course, with a slight reduction in time, it then gives teachers a bit more time back to do the things that they need to do. Maybe it's some teacher admin, maybe it's some marking or something like that, or student feedback. And actually, that's a really good point. Just on the note of feedback, how can we close the feedback loop to be, instead of, okay, I've handed in my English homework on Monday morning after doing it at the weekend, and I'm now going to get my feedback back on Thursday, which is the next time that I see my English teacher. Well, that feedback loop is two school days, 2 full school days, that actually I've lost interest in the work that I handed in on Monday. How can we close the feedback loop to make or to keep students more interested in the work that they're already doing, to help them to proactively and, well, I guess proactively and reactively go back to that piece of work and update it based on the teacher feedback. Just to touch on a couple of others, I am conscious of time. How can we help schools to deliver a better learning outcome through technology? You know, it's technology shouldn't really be seen anymore as a luxury when we're preparing students for the working world. You know, I spend all day, every day on a laptop, on my phone, on Teams calls, in collaborative documents, and really students and staff, that should be their norm as well, as they need to have an intimate understanding of how office technology works to succeed in even those entry level positions and professions. Of course, you know, we don't want them to just be able to use the tools. They will also benefit from learning to be secure when they're online. You know, there's a piece in there around cybersecurity, keeping your students and your staff aware of the threats that are out there, and you know, that will only be more pertinent again when they move up into the world of work. And the last point that I want to touch on is how can we make technology accessible for all? So, you know, how can we provide students with a device that maybe actually when they go home, they've not got the infrastructure at home with a Wi-Fi box to connect and speak to their teacher on Teams, speak to their peers on Teams, or even collaborate in a document? How could we maybe equip that student with an LTE device, so that they can stay online so that they can get online and stay online from anywhere? How can we also allow students to be as creative as they possibly can? You know, it's great that, you know, we can input on this device with a keyboard and with our finger, but what about when we enhance that then with a pen? So, you know, students then have 3 or 4 different ways to interact with a device. They've got pen, they've got touch, they've got a keyboard, but also there's also their body as well that they can use, and we'll touch on that a bit later too. There's also a point there to encourage independence and confidence with students as well, and also reducing outside distractions. I was a killer in school for being distracted. I've got the attention span of the attention span of a gnat. So, you know, things like Immersive Reader from Microsoft that helps to reduce the other distractions on the screen, keeping me focused on exactly what I should be doing, is a key thing. There's other things that Surface bring through their speaker technology and their camera technology to make it feel as though we're all in the room if we are still delivering a lesson remotely. So with that said, we're just going to dive in to see how M365 and Surface are the best combination. So engineers at Microsoft use a Surface device to build the future of M365. And there's a really deep connection between the productivity and the crafting design of a Surface device, and then of course the larger M365 solutions that I know so many of you guys already take advantage of. And the things that we use fairly often, such as Teams and OneNote, a lot of those applications are being developed and built on a Surface device at Microsoft, as I mentioned. Surface is often called, in fact, the best expression of M365. And these are just a couple of the core ways that we see those integrating. So both Surface and M365 are always designed around the ways that people use them. And I would say that Microsoft have been fairly good at also responding to feedback on how people are using them. And you'll have noticed that they implement new changes to the product lineup, maybe implement new product features in M365 as well. And in fact, we're seeing that become monthly with the constant and predictable update schedule for M365 apps and services, which is fantastic here. Now, of course, we're talking about crafting here, but that does also lead to innovation, and you see a lot of that in M365 as well. They work beautifully together, Surface and M365. There's some hardware advantages, even which using a device will with those Microsoft solutions, and I'll tell you about a few of those a bit later on in our chat. Finally, there's the security element that really helps to bring both of these two platforms together. And it's incredibly important to Microsoft, but also us here in academia, and I know all of you. So managing those devices in a secure way is critical, and it's all done in one seamless infrastructure with the security from chip to cloud every step of the way. And we touch on that a bit later on in our chat too. What does a modern deployment with a Surface device look like, and how can we ensure that all of those elements of the deployment that you made well do now through SCCM and imaging and older ways of doing it, if you like, but also ensuring that the security piece is in there as well. So this here is the Surface family. Microsoft have been building their Surface devices for quite some time, all the way back in 2012 when they've made the original Surface and the original Pro. And I'll be honest with you, Microsoft had a bit of learning to do with those first few devices. They listened an awful lot to the customer feedback there with both the Pro 1 and the Pro 2 and the Surface 3. And then they made the Surface Pro 3 in response to a lot of feedback that they heard from customers both in education and also industry that had implemented after this feedback, they'd implemented some new changes that even we still see in today's devices. The latest and greatest Surface, such as when it comes to the shape of the device, as an example, or the way that the pens work. They continue that innovation through adding a lot of different products into their lineup that you can see here on the screen. And we'll discuss a few of the members of the family a bit later on today. So here you see the full family. There's the Studio, the Hub, the Go, the Laptop Go, the Laptop, the Duo, the Pro X, and the Book. The devices that we'll touch on today are the Laptop Go, the Go 2, as it now is, the Laptop 4, the Pro 7, the Book 3, and the Studio. We won't touch on the other devices, as this is an edgy focused call. But by all means, if there are other devices that you are interested in that lineup, then do let us know after the call, and we'd be more than happy to have a discussion with you about them. So as you can see, there are some beautiful devices there, and I'm sure that some of you have seen them, maybe some of you have experienced them, but let's just look at what that experience looks like. What makes a Surface different? What sets them apart and makes them unique? We've already looked at in that last few slides M365 and Surface devices already, and how they both go hand in hand beyond just M365. But beyond M365, what are the capabilities that a device like a Surface is able to bring? One big part of what Microsoft brings to the party is it's all about the natural interaction, not being forced to use the device in one specific way. When we talk about natural interaction, that's things like our handwriting or our voice, and also using our body to interact with the device. It allows us to use the familiar tools for handwriting. For example, I could be expressing what I'm explaining to you by inking on the screen now. If I just get my pen out, I can pop a circle around that, underline this here, and I'm interacting with the device, albeit with my finger. I could still do that with a pen as well, which is quite cool. I'm just going to erase that, otherwise it will be there for next time. So the natural interaction is part of all of the members of our family of Surface devices, and it's not just about the pen and touch. We then go into the fact that Microsoft studies the way that people work and move. What makes us feel comfortable? The human factors group brings an array of disciplines together and keeps people at the center of what they make. Human factors in Microsoft does an incredible job of paying attention to how the human body reacts to the Surface devices, even the audio accessories that you see. In fact, you see here this horrifying array of heads on the screen. They're all configured to test a number of Microsoft audio devices. And all these different sciences that you see here at the bottom are the fields that the scientists at Microsoft study in the human factors group as they build out the Surface devices. Ergonomics, of course, is key. Anything that humans interact with needs to be ergonomically friendly. But things that we don't anticipate, such as auditory sciences, human motor control, the human body, and the industrial design, even the emotional design that's built to trigger a positive emotional reaction. These are all things that the people that are making Surface have in their heads as they're ideating and creating the next best product. This here is probably one of my favorite examples of what Microsoft do to just go above and beyond. So if you're ever searching for a bit of quiet space, a bit of relaxation, Microsoft has on their campus the quietest location on earth, and that's according to the Guinness Book of Records. It's an anechoic chamber, and you can't be in there for longer than 15 minutes because you start to lose your balance and equilibrium and ultimately fall over. Numerous people have recorded being able to hear the blood move around their body, which is a bit eerie and a bit grim, but there you go. But this room is used by Microsoft to test everything that makes a sound. What is the sound of a kickstand as it opens and closes? What is the sound of a type cover as we're typing on it? Is it a bit too distracting? Does a Surface dock make a noise once it's plugged in? These are all the questions that get answered when they have the ability to completely deprive a room of all sound whatsoever. And it's also key, in fact, for building in the great speech recognition technology, and of course the microphones, which are really fantastic on a Surface. And that's part of the overall design. And I'm sure what maybe played a factor, the design might have played a factor, but not the only factor, hopefully, in you attending today, is yes, the look and feel and overall design of a Surface. We here in academia think that they're stunning, and it's really the attention to detail that Microsoft puts in to the crafting of the devices that are really key. Do you remember those old Windows 7 laptops when Windows 7 was first released? And what was a Windows device? It was a device that was thick. It was really heavy. It was plasticky, and there was the one spot on the fan that just burns you. Well, with a Surface and the introduction of it managed to push a lot of innovation in Windows devices, and it continues to, and we continue to see more attractive devices every time that Surface have a release. This here that you see on the screen is incredibly attractive. It's a Surface laptop, and it's in sandstone. It's not rose gold. It is sandstone. But when you say innovation, this is not just limited to the visual effect of design, but across the line of all of the different products is wonderful things like fast charging, as an example. We all think of battery life, and there's some great battery life devices in the family, but with fast charging on every member of the Surface portfolio that has a battery, other than, of course, the Surface Hub, you go from 0 to 80% of battery in around an hour, and that's depending on the device, but generally the rule. So it's no longer about how much power can I store and accumulate throughout the day and sweat, but actually how quickly can I get that power back when I plug in for a Teams meeting. And that is really part of the attention to detail that goes into making just the premium devices for our users. And of course, it does make an impression. And this is important, these devices absolutely make an impression. And I feel that people have a sense of pride when they use a Surface device. The device you see on the screen there is in fact the device that I use personally at the moment, and I'll come on to that a bit later. And it really is yeah, a nice device. Yeah, as I say, we'll touch on that a bit later. But what we here in academia appreciate and are able to bring you guys is a special skew, if you like, of a Surface device. So the devices that we would provider support are not the same that you would normally find in a retail store. You know, they're called Surface for Education, and they're available through people like us. So we are a Microsoft partner. There are advantages to this, of course. So first is that the devices that are provided by us are going to be coming with Windows 10 Pro, whereas a lot of devices from retail come with Windows 10 Home. And this is key to really enable Windows Autopilot to function, to allow that seamless deployment through Intune. Windows 10 Pro, as I've just mentioned, is needed for that seamless experience. If anything does happen to be wrong with the devices, then of course, you know, we will take care of you, and as will the guys in Microsoft, because with those devices, you have what they call advanced exchange with some devices and some packages. So the replacement device can be sent straight to you. Then you can take your time, you know, moving the files over, and then send back the defective device. So you guys are never without a device. You always have a device to keep the productivity moving, even if there is a need to replace a device. Surface Laptop has now had its processor options increased as well, with the option of AMD as the processor, which is absolutely great to see. So that's in the Laptop 4. Again, we'll touch on that a bit later on. But something else that I really appreciate is the environmental efficiency, and I'm sure it's something that'll be pertinent and on the radar of your students as well. You know, the beautiful boxes that the people design and unbox, spend hours unboxing on YouTube. This box may not be the most amazing box to be unboxing. Of course, the product inside it is phenomenal, but the box is incredibly environmentally conscious. It is compostable in the most part. In fact, here is an example of a Surface box. Excuse me. Here's one I made earlier. It is completely made out of cardboard. Everything inside is cardboard, even down to the parts that hold the cables and the booklets and things. It's it is. It's all cardboard, and as I mentioned, in some aspects is also compostable. So in terms of a footprint, it's fantastic. So there's a lot less waste. So all of this work that the guys in Microsoft have put into their devices to make these different SKUs, creating a whole bunch of different capabilities, has led to some really cool results. And I'll just touch on these. I'll just touch on these here. This is a highlight, an overview of a few of the satisfaction scores that other customers, much like yourselves, have had. So a couple of these are really quite interesting. 82% of people agree that they feel they are more creative when using a Surface, which is pretty good. 86% agree they are more collaborative at work, which is critical now, especially as most of us are still remote, and collaboration is key. And often the first victim that goes. So, you know, we want to make sure that the devices make them feel more collaborative. And then 80%, and this is one of my favorite, 80% agree that a Surface device that Surface devices, help to position their organization as a top employer or top education provider. And this is a really interesting point. So we're seeing a Surface device become an employment tool for both students and staff in our education customers that we work with. But not only as an employment tool, but also a retention tool as well. You'll probably be surprised by the number of employees and students who actually care about the device that they're given to work on and how it makes them feel when they join a company. If they get given a beaten up old device that may be a second hand, then the first impression isn't so good. But if they were given a Surface device that was delivered to their door with a nice welcome pack, the first experience and interaction with you as an employer or as a student, as a teaching and learning provider is off to a great start. We're seeing a number of schools and colleges and also universities moving to Surface as a one-to-one device for their student cohorts. And we're seeing this become part of almost the school uniform, part of the kit that a college gives the students access to. And whilst it may seem as an incentive to join a college or a university, the teaching and learning benefits of having everybody on the same device are phenomenal. In fact, even in business, having your estate standardized just on the one platform is a huge advantage from a management point of view as well. So there's some great results here, but really it's up to you to determine if this really is the right fit for you. And hopefully today we'll answer a few more questions that you've got throughout the rest of our conversation. And yeah, I guess it's a question that we'll check in on throughout our time together. We're now going to walk through the members of the family that we touched on earlier in that small array. Just going to have a bit of water. There we go. So we in academia have been providing our customers with a Surface Pro for quite some time now, and it's been great to see them evolve and continue to improve, and that's why we now have the Surface Pro 7. The Pro 7 that we see is well, that's on the screen is the latest iteration. We're now on the Pro 7 Plus, but as I mentioned at the start, we were on the Pro 1 back in 2012, so it really has come on leaps and bounds. We see this device being an excellent fit for a wide array of roles and use cases. In fact, it's one of the most versatile devices in the family. It could be extremely portable, but it is also a laptop or a desktop replacement device as well. People who are working in an office or from school or from home, or maybe they're school teachers that are moving from room to room, students moving from room to room, or teachers moving site to site. Or even FE students, that are moving from the vocational course back to their employer or for their apprenticeship, or maybe even the university students who wanted to check in with their lecturers. This is an incredibly versatile device. And let's just look at the versatility of it a bit more. So the kickstand that you see at the back there, that can go down to studio mode, which is when it's reclined all the way down to more of a comfortable writing angle. In fact, the kickstand can be placed in whichever angle is most comfortable for your users. And as they go to write, it will hold itself there. You can rest your hand comfortably on the screen. Excuse me. It should take a good amount of weight as you're using it. Microsoft wanted to provide devices that have an amazing experience of writing with a pen, and a Surface really does deliver on that message. Just taking a look at this, I mentioned the Pro 3 and how much some changes were from the feedback from customers. The first two versions of Surface, the feedback from the first two versions of Surface, was that writing needed to be more comfortable. So they changed the shape of the screen. And you'll notice that the shape of a Surface display, even a Surface Hub, the screen is wide, it's 16 by 9, because a Surface device is the same shape as a piece of paper. Not always the same size, but the same shape. And we learn to write incredibly early on in our lives, and our brains create patterns. And so we understand the boundaries of paper and what we should be writing on. And so this has been proven to make writing even more comfortable. And that's why you see this aspect ratio of 16 by 9 or 3 by 2 in the other Surface devices. We're just going to take a quick deep dive into Surface Pen. I'm not going to touch on each of these points here, but what you see here is a somewhat schematic. We have a few of these schematic slides. Throughout our time together to just show you everything. And yeah, as I mentioned, I won't call out every single item that you see there on the screen, but I will say we have a lot of neat stuff inside the Surface Pen. For example, the eraser at the top is clickable so that you can take a screen capture, or with one click it can advance a PowerPoint presentation. We've got the pressure support on Surface Pen, so if there is a person who's sketching much like they would with a pencil, they can hold it to the side, maybe do some shading, and of course that is pressure sensitive as well if you're drawing, just a light shading as well. And that's all achievable with the Surface Pen. Let's talk about how the pen is powered. You may be familiar with other pens on the market or pencils out there that require recharging. This version of the Surface Pen does not require recharging. It has up to 18 months of battery life, which is through a quadruple A battery inside the pen. And if you didn't know that existed, then you weren't alone. I didn't know that was until I got my hands on one either. We just zoom into the nib, or the tip of the pen. This is one of the things that really struck out to me. Is there's actually a tiny little grain up here. You can maybe see it ever so slightly. Am I drawing on the screen? There we go. Ever so slightly. That's a very poor arrow. But yeah, you might be able to see it there. And it's a small grain on the end of the pen, and that is there. What that is there to do, sorry, is add the friction and the resistance of a ballpoint pen on paper. So because writing is a muscle memory, if it doesn't match your expectations, it can feel a bit awkward or uncomfortable. And so by using the Surface Pen like this on a glass screen, and if you happen to have a Surface with a pen, then you could try this out for yourself. With the small tip at the end, move it right across the screen, and you'll feel a slight bit of resistance. And that does help to make it feel even more realistic and more comfortable, as if you were writing on a piece of paper. We all know that pens are going to be great for signing our names or taking notes or asking students to draw or annotate, but we need to have them do more. So in fact, when building Windows 10, Microsoft built in key capabilities for a Surface Pen. One of my favorite parts of Pen is the fact that you can use it as both a mouse and a keyboard. Of course, by default, it acts as a mouse, and you click on what you want, and the pen is a precision pointer, which is great, But then the keyboard piece, you'll see an icon on your screen that looks something like this. This is highlighted here. Do a little circle there, and that brings up the on-screen keyboard as you see here. What that's doing is that's allowing you to put your handwriting into that panel, write in your own natural handwriting at full speed. Don't cut in any breaks or anything like that. What it will do is it will convert your handwriting into typed text, as you can see on the screen here, and that will work anywhere that you can type in Windows. So it's not just about taking your own handwritten notes or signing the pen, it's not just about taking your own handwritten notes or signing. The pen can also be used as a precision pointer and even a keyboard. So experiences or education apps that are not at all optimized for touch can still have the benefit of using a Surface Pen and natural handwriting. But the pen is new, it's fancy, and we think it's amazing. And we do consider it and recommend it to all customers, but not everybody gets a Surface Pen. But something that is quite popular, of course, is the keyboard. We'll just touch on this. So if a Surface is going to replace a laptop, you need to have a lot of nice typing experiences. This here is the signature type cover. It's how you get that laptop-like experience with a full-size keyboard on a device that is incredibly portable and versatile. One thing that I've heard about the type cover is, hey, will my users be able to adjust to it? Is it smaller keys and other issues like that? What I'm incredibly happy to say is that a type cover has the same key size and spacing as the Microsoft desktop keyboard. In fact, one of the things that I like to show our customers who have that concern is, if you were to take this type cover and place it on top of any keyboard, you should have the same key sizes and spacing or greater, which is a lot of the beautiful work that's been put into making this type cover separate from others. Just take a look at almost right along the top there. There's a magnetic strip which is meant so the keyboard can pop up and clip into position. You'll see it here. If I just go back to my drawing mode with the pen, there we go. You'll see it. Oh, it's probably not the best. Oh, whoops! We've been advancing the slides. There we go. Sorry, just go back to the pen. There we go. You'll see it just here. There we go. You can see the red on red. That's good. And you'll see here that there's some goldish bits that are the smart connectors, if you like, and they link up to the device and ultimately give it that feel that you see here. So here the keyboard is connected on the bottom. It's popped up, and then you've got a nice raised writing experience. Now, of course, this here is laptop mode. And as I mentioned earlier, the kickstand at the back can be moved down all the way down to studio mode if you would like. Strange that we're looking at this device. Actually, we're going to look at this in a bit more detail now. This is the Surface Go 2, and is the next device that we're going to have a look at as we continue the journey of the Surface family. This here is the Go 2, and we absolutely love this device, and especially as most of you are education customers, this is the device that was built with you guys in mind, as well as the mobile workers that need a device that is immediately available. Here is a device that is powered for on-the-go learning. It can last a school day. That's what it was made to do. It is in fact the smallest member of the family, and is incredibly similar in the design to the Pro that we've just looked at. As I say, just a tad smaller. You've still got the magnetic strip on the keyboard, and the keyboard is more compact, but it still has the same features and functionality. Here's another view of the Go 2. It also has LTE compatibility. So as we mentioned at the start, for those students who maybe don't have a Wi-Fi box at home but still need to connect up and speak to their peers, collaborate with their peers, speak to their teachers, etc., then there is the optional extra of LTE on this device. It's also got an enhanced processor option as well. So the first version of this had a Pentium Gold processor, which is powerful enough for most users that are doing more simple and standard applications on Windows. But there was a lot of feedback to Microsoft, who of course they listened. So here with the Go 2, it also has a Core M3 processor as well, which adds just a bit more of that power and performance. It is a full Windows machine, so whatever type of app that you're wanting to run, you can install it, and you'll be good to go on the Surface Go. Excuse the alliteration. You do need to, you do get up to 10 hours of battery life with this machine, which is, as I said, just as versatile as a Pro. And you can recline the kickstand all the way back down to studio mode and take your rich notes. Use it in a tablet mode, as is being done here on the screen. I'm pointing over here because that's where my screen is, but here is the webcam. But also you can use it in a laptop form with the keyboard, or even just walking around and taking pictures and videos of your learning environment, for an experiment or a piece of work that you're doing to upload, etc. There's a lot of use cases for this device, which is fantastic. It is the lightest. It is the smallest. It has a slightly larger screen than the previous Go. It comes with a 10.5-inch screen, but it's still the same case size as the original Go. So it's a newer device that's more powerful, a slight upgrade on the previous one with a bigger screen, and also other options for processors. And as I said, is the go-to device that we have for our education customers. This is the Surface Laptop 4. So this is perfect for users who want a classic laptop experience, but of course with the signature crafting and attention to detail from Surface. And I know that a good number of you expect some interesting devices, but this device, as I mentioned earlier, is a device I use personally, and is what I'm presenting at the moment. It's my actual computer, and it's the Laptop 4. I'm a huge fan of the laptop, because there really is that need, and people have been asking Microsoft for this for a while. There are users where the versatility is key, but for some of you, that feedback has been expressed that we want a premium Surface device, we want to standardize with the Surface, but we want more of that traditional laptop feel. But the Surface Laptop team isn't just going to make a traditional Surface laptop. No, of course not. What they've made is a very premium feel device that is at a very reasonable price compared with what you have out there with other devices. The Laptop 4 now also comes with 2 processor options. There's an Intel quad-core 11th gen processor, but now there's also the option of an AMD Ryzen processor. So the one that I'm using at the moment is a Ryzen 5 processor, which is excellent. That the Microsoft has now added AMD into their performance. Of course, you need to strike the perfect balance. It's great having all this performance. Apologies. It's great having all this nice It's nice stuff that, you know, it looks good, but you can still get everything done with the everyday laptop. So this device, you know, you can still get everything done that you would expect to, whilst it also looks nice as well. It's available in two sizes. That's a 13.5 and a 15-inch screen, and it either comes in a metal or the Alcantara material, which we've not actually featured in any of the devices that we've seen today, other than the Pro. Actually, that was the Alcantara keyboard. Up to 19 hours of battery life with fast charging. So again, it's no longer how much power can we hold in the device, but it's how quickly can we get that power back that we've used as and when we're on a Teams call. There is, of course, the option on this device for a removable SSD, which has been, again, from the feedback from Microsoft for the data compliance issues. So it was an example is the police need to be able to retain their hard drives, which they can now do with a removable SSD on laptop 4. Of course, other organizations need to as well. Just that was the first one that popped to mind where we've had experience. Of course, you've still got the cameras, you've still got the fantastic speakers from Microsoft, and also it is incredibly quiet. You can't, still can't hear it going, even though we're presenting a webinar on it today, which is fantastic. Then there's the Laptop Go. So this is the lightest laptop, and it powers your essential everyday experiences. It, of course, still makes an impact and an impression, and it also still has the balance of performance and battery life, but also beauty, and of course helps you get your job done. It's still got a touchscreen display that, of course, lets you work exactly how you want to. It checks all the boxes with a slim and lightweight laptop that, again, helps you get your work done wherever you would like to work. There's 3 choices of colors, a 12-inch screen, 13 hours of battery life, and 10th gen Intel Core technology, which is awesome. What's really cool about it is it's got this fingerprint in it as well for Windows Hello. So not only have you got the face recognition as part of this device, but you've also now got biometrics through your fingers as well. Of course, you've still got the full-size keyboard, and as mentioned previously, you've still got the premium Surface design, which is great. This is the Surface Book 3. Apologies, I should also just touch on the Laptop Go a bit more. So this is the device that we're seeing schools and colleges and also universities move over to, where they want to offer their students a more laptop field device. They don't want to offer them a tablet, as we've seen in the Surface Go and the Surface Pro. They want their students to have the option of a laptop, which is where we've seen this device be quite successful. So yeah, to just jump forward, back to the Book 3. So this is an awesome device, almost the powerhouse of the Surface devices. And if you are a power user, then this device is absolutely the one for you. It's available in a 13.5-inch version, as well as a 15-inch. But as I keep saying, is the performance powerhouse, and is in fact the most powerful device that Microsoft has produced. But as we'll see shortly, it doesn't lose any of the versatility that we've seen in other devices. Won't go through the speeds and feeds, but it's got incredible graphics processing power, which is fantastic. It's a GeForce GTX and an NVIDIA Quadro RTX card. I think it's the RTX 5000. That again, those high spec graphics cards are crucial for those industry specific apps that you see here on the screen. So Adobe CC, Autodesk, and Revit, AutoCAD is great. These devices, as I keep mentioning, I should play bingo for the number of times I've said performance powerhouse, but it is absolutely that powerhouse. But as I mentioned, it's not just about the power. It's also incredibly versatile, much like the Pro devices. So what we've got here in the top left is, of course, the laptop mode. That's just the standard laptop mode. We then come down to tablet mode. We then move over to studio mode, which is just over here. And then we jump down here to presentation mode. Tablet mode might look a bit odd to you, but what I've not touched on is the fact that this device, through the touch of a button, can actually detach from the keyboard and can still be used as a tablet should you wish, which is really quite cool. So it still gives you the digital canvas if you still need it. Which, of course, if you're using those industry-specific apps that we've just touched on, then you most probably will need a digital canvas of some sort. Just jumping ahead to the Surface Go 2, goodness me, the Surface Studio 2, sorry. This is the next member of the family that we're going to go through. I won't spend too much time on this one, but this is the only kind of a desktop style device that the Surface family has. It's the dawn of studio mode, if you like. It is, in my opinion, the most premium Windows desktop that we've seen, or that we've seen here in academia anyway, because in just a simple push of a finger, that device can go down into studio mode, as you see here in the bottom left. That 28-inch screen just floats down on the zero gravity hinge to 20 degrees and becomes a digital drafting table, so that we can get right into what we're doing with pen. Even use the dial that you see there as well in the images and in the slides, or even you push the screen down to speak to the colleague opposite you, but then when you're done speaking with them, or you don't want to hear from them anymore, then you just lift the screen back up. So it's incredibly versatile. As mentioned, it's a 24-inch display. It's a 4K display as well. So actually, it's the same size as 4 Surface Pro 7s, all tiled together. It's got heaps of options. It's got the option of a dedicated graphics card as well, so it can also run those powerful applications that people need. But of course, it's got a minimalist design too. So we've seen customers opt to put Studio at their receptionist desks as a good first impression, or in a computer lab or art and design lab where students need to be creative with the device, allowing them to draw on the screen, annotate on the screen in that drafting mode, and edit movies in desktop mode, and so much more. Of course, as I mentioned, the dial also works on screen, where you can place it on the screen, not just control the volume, but how I'm using the pen. So it could be more of an artistic tool, and it could maybe change the paint I'm using. It could change the brush stroke that I'm doing. It could change the pen that I'm using on the screen just through using the dial. So it gives an incredible experience to those creative users, which is pretty cool. That's the family. That's the end of the family that we wanted to touch on. As we mentioned earlier, we're only going to touch on those few devices, but of course, if you do want to go through any more of these with us, or there's other devices on here that are of interest to you, then do please let us know. We'd be more than happy to run through them with you. We're just going to touch quickly on what remote working and remote teaching looks like through Teams. So of course, it's being together even when you're apart, keeping everybody linked up and able to collaborate, which over the last year or so has been incredibly important. As I'm sure you guys will have noticed, over the last year, there's been an incredible amount of updates to Teams education that has made it the product that it is today. And again, that's from a customer feedback. The product we see today is completely different from what we saw 12 to 14 months ago. Just off the top of my head, just thinking what we've got now, we've got the option to have a presenter in the corner of the corner of the screen, much like you're viewing here in this webinar. You've got the option to add in a dictation piece, so you no longer need to take your meeting notes. They all just appear there in the chat at the end of the meeting. Of course, you've got together mode, which is where Teams brings everybody that's on the call with you all together, so it looks like you're almost in an auditorium, which is really quite cool. And of course, the privacy and security of Teams is always being updated, as it is with all of the other devices in the family, to really give you that security from chip all the way through to cloud. Just a point on how a Surface device really enables that collaboration between students and teachers. just a couple of points here to note: the incredibly rich and crisp microphones that are available on a Surface device. You've also got the Dolby Atmos speakers in Surface, which allow you to hear people incredibly clearly. But as well as hearing people, you need to be able to see people too. And they've got an awesome set of cameras, which is what you're seeing me through today. In fact, you're seeing me through a third-party camera. Yeah, there's incredible cameras that give you that really crisp image. And this comes from all those points that we touched on right at the start. The human factors group, they've had an input into this and how we interact with the device. You then touch on the anechoic chamber, which really helps to develop the microphone inputs and the speakers in Surface, and then the camera. We didn't touch on a point for them, but of course the camera that really, again, going back to together mode on Teams, is the point that's kept us all feeling like we're all together still after a year of being apart. So we're now going to touch on what modern deployment looks like and what a zero-touch deployment, what a modern management looks like and what a zero-touch deployment looks like with Surface. We'll also touch slightly on the life cycle of the Surface, and then we'll go to your questions just after we've touched on what Surface as a service looks like from academia and how we can support you. You likely use a wide variety of solutions for managing your devices, and part of M365 has a lot of modern ways of managing devices that still retain the compatibility of what you've been using for quite a while. And if the term SCCM or System Center Configuration Manager rings a bell, then you're likely to be involved in the decisions that happen in the deployment of devices and the management of devices. Microsoft's not abandoned the ways of the past, but it's continued to innovate, and all of that kind of comes together in Microsoft Endpoint Manager, kind of an umbrella solution. So what you see here is you've got Intune, Configuration Manager, and other endpoint manager tools all being bundled into Microsoft's Endpoint Manager, which is great. And the Configuration Manager, is the new name of SCCM. So yeah, again, it brings everything together under one umbrella. You've also got analytics here. You've got other management tools that are part of the solution as well, which is great. There's a lot of parts that are key to the management of M365 and your devices as part of M365. It's almost a bit of a jigsaw that you see here on the screen. So the key to a good autopilot experience, or even just a good management experience if you are still using SCCM, is all part of the cloud puzzle that you see here on the screen. We need to have an authorized device, an authorized user. The device needs to be managed, and all of the settings and policies and the restrictions, even the applications, all need to be present in the device settings to then be deployed on a role-based method. I notice I said there a role-based method, and something that we may touch on a bit later, but I'll touch on it now. Previously, there may have been two images in school, one for student devices and one for teacher devices. But actually, when you look at the teacher devices, staff devices, there's a lot of umbrellas that fall into that. You've got teacher devices, SLT devices, admin devices that all maybe use the one image, but actually, instead of giving everybody permissions and access to everything, why don't you just do it on a role-based permissions where, this is a teacher profile, so they're going to get the teacher permissions. This is an SLT device, so they're going to get the SLT permissions. So how can we make sure that everybody is only seeing what they need to see, and not everything? And that's all part of modern management, where it's based on a user, not a particular device. An added bonus, of course, as we like bonuses, is there's a lot of great things in here to help to emphasize the modernness of the modern ways of the way that these devices are managed. So analytics is a core part. If we're looking at this view, so here we're having a look at the desktop analytics in preview, and we look at the Windows deployments. what devices are using the latest and greatest, what devices are using older generations, how many devices are using the latest Office versions, how many aren't using the latest at all. So we can really see here in our estate what we need to go and attack, what we need to go and interact with and keep on top of. And this is all things that the Microsoft Endpoint Management Suite can really help out with. You'll see here that that there's a point here on assets. So we can see across our whole estate of 12,300 devices, which is huge. Exactly, how many apps are deployed, Office apps, and also add-ins are deployed to those as well. You've then got some charts a bit further down that just displays the data that you see above in a different way. And on the left-hand side, you've got the different you've got the different tabs that you can go into and explore. Now, of course, just one thing that I'm going to call out here is ATP or Advanced Threat Protection. It's a part of Microsoft Defender, and that entire solution set of M365 that makes itself known here in Endpoint Manager. So with ATP, you can get real-time stress-tested results of how secure your organization really is. And just a side note, one of my favorite features in here of ATP is when you can pull tricks on your own employees, your own staff, your own students. And what I mean by that is you can create a fake phishing attempt where you can ask it to send an email, to your own users, pretending to ask them for their authentication to sign in, posing as yourselves as a fake way, and actually you then get the reporting as to how many people have fallen for it, which is kind of an interesting approach and something that we don't do all of the time because that's a bit mean, but it does give an accurate test of are my users up to date? Is there maybe a training piece that needs to take place here, or actually has nobody fallen for it and everybody's reported it? So I've now got hundreds of tickets that I need to respond to because everybody has reported this attempt. Now, of course, if I've got hundreds of tickets that everybody's reported, that's a great thing. But yeah, but yeah, there we go. There was a slight deviation there. Another point I'm just going to touch on is the secure score. So this takes all of the analytics that we see here and all of the results of these different things and the intrusion testing, and the standard things that Microsoft does to keep you safe, and it boils it all down to a secure score, and it then recommends ways that that can be improved further. And of course, it's always a balance between the user flexibility and security. Security is, of course, incredibly important, but just using M365 on a Surface device inherently gives a lot of security, but it can get really strict. So it's entirely in your hands, and of course, we're here to support you and help you out with however that needs to be arranged and also managed. And again, we can help you out with that. We're just going to touch on the DFCI piece. I'm just going to, excuse me. What you can see here on the screen, by the way, is a demo of the DFCI interface creating an Intune profile, if I remember correctly. So there is a new feature that isn't inherently unique to Surface, but Surface is currently the only device to feature it. Touch wood, the date today is the 24th of June. So if you are watching this in the future, then that may not be quite as accurate. But it's the technical name for it is the Device Firmware Configuration Interface, or the DFCI, and what that is essentially is a management of what was previously unmanageable. So almost every element of Windows, the whole hard drive itself, can be encrypted now with the likes of BitLocker. It's incredibly, which makes it incredibly secure, and that's been a standard for so long. But the UEFI, or even the BIOS, of the device, previously something that hasn't been manageable, exists without the operating system as well. So you can remove the hard drive, and the of course the BIOS is still there. And so for that reason, being able to now manage everything from when you switch the device on to when you switch the device off is absolutely fantastic. So you can change and modify all sorts of settings in here, whether that's the camera being completely switched off, or the boot order is now locked. These can all be controlled remotely in the cloud, or indeed any other points that you would have previously put into the BIOS. These can all be sorted out in the cloud. Of course, a Surface device is the only device with a DFCI on it at the moment, it allows you to keep your estate as secure as possible. And yes, as I mentioned, what we're seeing here on the screen is where this is configured in Intune as part of the configuration profile. Speaking of Intune, we're just going to touch on what a zero-touch deployment looks like. So these modern solutions that we've just touched on, we're going to move over to the zero-touch deployment and Autopilot. We're hearing a lot of asks for information around this currently, and we have some amazing fixes here in academia, or services here in academia, that we can build out this entire experience that we've been through today for you. But I am getting a bit ahead of myself. Let's look a bit more at what the modern deployment is. This is a great quote. This is a brilliant quote, in fact, from real customers who have used and standardized on Windows Autopilot for everything that they've done. This user says that they can get a device up and running in about 10 minutes, whereas previously with imaging it took them up to 24 hours and also involved restoring from a backup. That was the process before, and now they can get a device in the hands of a user in the space of 10 minutes. Another example here is that wherever I send a device, it will go through this entire experience and be set up exactly as they want it, with all of the settings and all of the all of the points that I need the device to have that I would normally have had to interact to get them on the device as the IT manager. A good example of this, I guess, is if you've got a school overseas, you've got a student overseas, or even you've got a school in the UK that needs to get a device out to a student ASAP because they've now got to go into a quarantine or isolation. Then you can ship a device straight to them from academia, and we know, and that device belongs to that student. We tell Microsoft that. So when the device arrives at home, the student turns it on, they go through a small bit of the setup environment, and then they're straight in. So I guess what exactly is this? Let's look at a traditional deployment, which I know most of you already use our services for, which is imaging. So we've been doing imaging here in academia for an incredibly long time, and it is effective in an awful lot of ways. It allows us to create this beautiful system image, and aside adding the drivers, the settings and the policies and Office and all the applications that are needed. And that's been working great for a long time. But we do see some challenges with that, of course. If Microsoft decides to push out an update to Windows 10, a lot of stuff in the press at the moment is Windows 11. That image is no longer going to work. And that image needs updating every time there's a new version of Windows. Every time that you deploy a device with that image, that now needs to go and get an update for Windows. That's not a terribly good experience. But also, that image is made for that specific specific device with the drivers, etc. But if you move to another OEM's a device, then you would need to make a new image with all of those drivers. So anyway, what I'm saying is there's a good amount of work that's needed our side, which is absolutely fine, to ensure that we manage the image correctly for you. And of course, if we don't do that for you now, then that is a piece of work that you guys will know all too well. And then of course it's got to be dropped off in our configuration center, or even in your IT lab, and then all on a bench, and then the imaging commences through either Ethernet cables or even USB sticks. And we did this over and over again as we deploy the devices. While this does work, there is a more modern way of doing it through Autopilot. So, as I mentioned, here we've got the device that we put on the bench, and then we do it over and over again on all of the devices that we bring in for you and image. So yes, there is a more modern way of doing this, and here's how it works. It's incredibly similar to an image. It has all of those things that we create for you. The drivers, the settings, the policies, Office, and other applications. And then the device is shipped straight to the end user after we've set the device up for you, and Intune is created the profiles for the users. They're then sent out. We as academia don't ever need to see them, and you as the IT team never need to see them either. They can go straight to the end user to be used, and the end user then connects up to their internet as part of the setup. Then it brings down the MDM profile, and you as the IT team can now sit back, relax, play some Xbox if you like, or you get the idea. You get a heap of time back because you've not had to touch the devices, because we as academia have taken control or taken over the management of your Intune and Autopilot environment, or even we've helped you to get to where you need to be with creating that environment to be ready for this method of deployment. Now, of course, there's a small checklist of things that we need to go through first to make sure that you can do an autopilot deployment. So you do need Azure Active Directory Premium P1, and we can go through this in more detail after the call as well. You do also need an MDM solution, but there are other ways of doing this that could maybe be slightly cheaper or more cost effective for you. So there's Enterprise Mobility and Security that brings both of those licenses under one umbrella, again helping bring a cost saving. But there is also other ways that we can have a look at this for you and really help to reduce your licensing cost while also giving you the services that you need as a school, a college, a trust, and a university. And I'd really urge you to get in touch with your team here in academia, your account managers, and have a conversation with them around how we can help you to save a cost through your licenses, through the likes of CSP licensing, and other things. There's a heap of work that we can do there with you to help to bring that cost down. As mentioned throughout the day, the last point that I wanted to touch on before we get to your questions, if there are any, is what does Surface as a service look like from academia? So how can we give you easy I'll start from the top, sorry. How can we give you a fantastic user experience with cutting edge technology, with a predictable monthly, quarterly, or even annual cost, with a simplified deployment, but also that is incredibly easy to scale? So, if you are a school that's looking to do this with 1 year group, but then next year it's expanding to another and another and another, or if you're a college that's looking to do this with just one department, and then next year you want to scale across the college. Maybe you're a MAT who would like to start up in one school and ultimately scale that across other schools in the MAT, or even you're a higher education organization who really want to scale it outside of the one department it's in. Academia can help you out with that. So taking each of those points, we can help you to choose the device, almost, make you a bespoke area to go and buy your bundles, if you like. So we'll work with you to choose the devices, what the software and the licensing is that goes alongside that. So not just the M365 licensing, but also is there any Adobe Creative Cloud licensing that needs to go alongside it, or indeed anything else. We'll then also look at the accessories at the same time that we look at the device. But then what we'll also do is look at how we can help you to make this a reality. So how can we help you out with the logistics? We're getting asset tags out on the devices. How can we help you out with the deployment and also ongoing management? how can we get you up and running with Intune and Autopilot in the first place, but then also how can we help you to manage that estate as it goes on. And then of course, as new people join your organization, as I mentioned, it's easily scalable. You buy the student package and boom, you've got everything that you need for that one student. So just to wrap up, that's everything that we've been through today. It was a bit of a whistle-stop tour. There were some bits that we just lightly touched on, but I really hope that that's been incredibly useful for you. I'm just going to read over to the chat and see if we've got anything in the questions. If we haven't, that's always good news, as it means that everything has been covered off. Excellent. So yeah, no, there's no questions in the chat. So with that, we will leave you there, and thank you very much